Welcome to another Market Makers of Iowa Real Estate podcast. In this podcast, we talk with other lenders, we talk with other real estate agents about the insights, the strategies, the tactics that they're using to create a better business, create a business they enjoy working in, and how to work together with other lenders and real estate agents. And the reason I started the podcast is simply because I think that agents talk too much trash about other agents. Agents talk too much trash about other lenders, and not that all of it isn't needed. Some of the accountability that agents are trying to hold other agents to is needed. But if you're an agent and you don't have a good mentor, or you don't have a good place to hear what you should and shouldn't be doing, you absolutely need a place to come. And that's why I put this podcast together. I believe that every agent wants to know what other good agents are doing, and not necessarily just really tactical stuff, but just in general, how do you become a better co-working agent so that when you're submitting an offer, the agent that is the listing agent can talk their client into picking your offer instead of others, because you put together a professional, you submitted a professional offer and you have held yourself in a professional way. It's going to go a long ways. That's my theory. That's my hypothesis. And that is why I'm putting this podcast together. I'm your host, Darson Grantham, and in this episode, we have Anthony Lynn joining us. Anthony Lynn, I did not know the history of how he started before he started, but when he starts telling this story, it's one of my absolute favorite ways that agents could and should start in the industry. It's a tough one. It's a tough way to start. It's a very gritty way to start, but you'll see when he tells his story, I think it's almost questionably a guaranteed success if you follow this method. Whatever.
I'm just going to roll with it. I like a little bit more organic.
That's my preference too, but you're the guest.
I appreciate it.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Darson Grantham, real estate agent, investor here in Des Moines, and podcast host to this podcast, which this podcast, I interview agents and lenders across Iowa simply to get a better understanding of what positive agent feedback is, what agents should be doing, shouldn't be doing, while having conversations with other agents and lenders, right? So I started this podcast simply because I get so fed up with agents talking poorly about other agents or lenders talking poorly about other lenders. And really, we're all running our own businesses. We can do business however we would like to do business, but I do think that there is a best practice way to do business and to make transactions efficient for both ourselves, the lenders, and the clients. And so ultimately, that's the goal here, is to educate. And we're just talking to agents and just talking to lenders. Anthony is here. Anthony Lynn, right, is here from here locally in Des Moines. He's an agent at RE/MAX Concepts, correct?
Correct.
Cool. And so, Anthony, can you just give us a 2 minutes on your professional life before real estate and then where you're at as an agent here, and we'll just get in the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started pretty early on as a realtor. I was about 22 years old. I was interning at a company going into my senior year of college, and I said, hey, well, this is the company. It was a risk reinsurance brokerage here in Des Moines, and I said, well, this is the career I'm going to have. Ultimately, I started working there after college, and I wanted to move to the sales part of that team because I was stuck in a cube looking at Excel spreadsheets all day. Hated it. That just wasn't my vibe whatsoever. So, and I would always see the sales team flying from Chicago. They're wearing these nice suits and always had a smile on their face, and they were never in their office, and I had a cube. And so I was like, man, I want to move to sales. So I took a sales class at DMAC. And the final of that, the professor had brought in someone from the sales community, and he happened to be a broker owner of an office up in Ankeny, a real estate office. I presented my final to him. It was like a fictitious hotel. He had to we had to convince him to hold as a fictitious event there at this hotel. And he goes, hey, I've been coming here often. This is a great presentation. What are you doing after school? And I said, well, this is kind of what I'm doing. And he goes, well, here's my card. If you ever want to get into real estate, just kind of let me know. I remember walking out of there and looking at his card, and I was like, man, I don't even like HGTV. What do I want to get into real estate for, But, the more I thought about it, a couple days later, I set up a meeting with him, and I went in and he convinced me to get into real estate. And, the rest was history. I remember sitting in that cube, and I one of my first deals was actually a new construction deal. And so, the home had to be built. That whole process took about 7-8 months. And I said, okay, when this thing hits, I'm going to go full time in real estate. And so that's what I did. Ultimately, there were some bumps along the road, but here we are.
What year was that you did a sales presentation?
Oh man, that would have been 2000. Well, we're 2024, about 2013, I think. So I've been in the business about 11 years.
Sweet.
So
11 years.
11 years.
Dude, you're like an OG.
Time flies when you're having fun, so they say.
So what was it about the real estate agent business that lured you in? Like, because you were working full time, and then you got a deal. You got someone to put a custom home under contract or whatever. Like what? And then what was like? Okay, now I'm gonna go full time because it'll eliminate my W-2, or like what's that look like?
Yeah. So again, I didn't really care for that job I was working for. It was just hard for me to be really passionate about doing the same thing over and over again. And the thing about real estate, I had a very great mentor with that broker owner. And so I would shadow him everywhere, and he just always was just on it. Always making people happy, just, making these deals come to life. And I thought that was super cool that he was never doing the same thing again and always on the go. And so that really drew me in a little bit of that, and just, again, doubling down on changing people's lives in the sense of, I remember he would meet with some people and they'd say he was very good at numbers. And so they'd say, I just don't know how I can make this work. And he would and he had amazing memory too. He could remember addresses, names like that. And so he would just do some numbering and, think of like, oh, well, we have this home over here. We can show you, because it was always new construction.
Okay.
And so just from day one, I was always part of new construction homes. So he would kind of manipulate those numbers and how it would work for them, things like that. And just really savvy with the lenders. We had in-house lenders as well too, different lending products and things like that. So a little bit of seeing him kind of work his magic, and I was just like, man, I want to be like this guy. This guy is really on it. And I remember we were driving one time, and he'd always, when I'd shadow him, he'd give me paperwork to read and different deals and transactions. And he's like, hey, read this while I'm driving, because he'd always be on the phone and whatnot. And he would have me like work on scripts and things like that, like what to say, how to say, when to say it, things like that. Words to win with, as Brian Buffini would call it on the Buffini system. I believe that was his anyway. But nonetheless, he said, now listen, you're watching me do all of this, but you have to really zero in your own style. You can't mimic everything I do, because it won't work for you. So all of that is the reason why I kind of transitioned. I was like, yeah, this is a little bit better than what I'm doing.
Did you shadow him while you had a W-2 job?
Yeah. So actually, when I had a W-2 job, so I was working that job, coaching high school football at the same time, and shadowing him. So yeah, doing all of that at the same time. It was pretty a lot going on.
Yeah, a ton. The job shadow thing is super fascinating to me. Do you work in the office much, or do you go into your guys' office?
Yeah. This level of my business, I would say my office is more so my truck, driving around on my hotspot. But I have philosophy that, especially when, those deals aren't coming in, I'm sure maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, but always get back to the basics. That's what I always say. Just get back to the basics. And part of my basics philosophy is always showing up to the office, doing those little things there. So every single day, a lot of times 7 days a week, I'm at my office and just really focusing on money-making activities, or just things that are really important to do at that time, or time sensitive. So,
and the reason I ask is that's a way. So newer agents, right? If you don't have that agent that you can go shadow, or if you are an agent that's been in it for a while and you're like, hey, I want to take that next step, it's going to involve removing your ego. But if you're at 3 million a business and you're like, how do I get to 7 million? How do I double plus? Go look at what a $7 million agent does, shadow them. And if you can't remove that ego, or you can't find the person to shadow, actually call one of us. We'll find someone for you. Yeah. But you just go into the office and you pinpoint, this is what I've done, pinpoint the agents that have that business that you're like, I want to know what they're doing every day in order to reach their numbers.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. No, that is incredibly important, because when I was really trying to figure out this business, I was extremely green at it. And so I always said that I want to act as a sponge, and I just want to soak up as much knowledge as possible. So I tell people I was kind of putting my nose where it didn't belong, where I was trying to sit in on meetings that I had no part of.
I've done that my entire career.
Yeah. See, so you really see the value in it, and you're really trying to zero in on kind of what do they know that I don't, where can I fill these voids, or, your knowledge is just superior, because then when you sit or run across, sit with a meeting with some prospective clients, or you're sitting across from them and they ask a question, it's like, well, oh yeah, I was just part of that, or, I kind of know. But yeah, acting as a sponge. Sometimes when I'm in my office now, at this point in my career, there's a lot of agents that ask me questions. So if I'm really, really busy, I oftentimes do work from my truck or at home. But I really, really enjoy when agents do ask me questions, because it's kind of like in college, right? You can do like run study tables or things like that for people. And I did that a couple times. And what I found, even though I knew the information, a lot of times they're asking me questions, and I got better at that certain class.
The teacher learns more than the student.
Yeah. Like that philosophy. Right. And so that's kind of how it is right now in this career field as well too. When they ask me questions, I'm just always talking real estate and helping them. It's kind of like when I coach football, right? I remember having coaches, they're like, oh, well, I get the same joy out of playing out of coaching as I did playing. Well, it's kind of cool, to coach someone in real estate, and you see them be successful and that big smile on their face and their life become fruitful. It's kind of a full circle moment with that as well too.
Totally is. Where you mentioned a few times, like where you're at in your current profession, or like in your current career, like give us some understanding of how do you run your agent business? Do you have other agents? Do you have just a lot of admins? Are you just solo? And what is it? And then why is it that is what you've decided, I guess?
Yeah, so I've kind of run the gamut, the solo agent for a very, very long time. And then I had a team of agents. That was during COVID. I found that extremely helpful, because I just couldn't be 3-4 places at once. As you're out showing a house and you have 2 other people saying, oh, this house just came up, or we have to write an offer, and deadlines, things like that. So it was extremely helpful to have other agents to kind of help you out with that business. And then so now I've transitioned into more so I have an assistant, and she's actually being licensed right now currently. And then I also have a virtual assistant as well too. And then I have other people that help me out with my social media. Like I have a content guy that does video, and then, any kind of post, things like that. That's extremely helpful as well too. And that's kind of how I'm running things right now.
Cool. And like, I always love the transition away from a team to back to like the base groundwork. What was the reason, impetus for that?
Honestly, if I'm being truly frank with it, is that old saying of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. I struggle with that, right? Because when I first got licensed, I was wanting to do every open house. I was wanting to do anything I could to act as a sponge. And there's just some people that just aren't the same as that. And that's okay, because they probably have other strong points that I just don't. And so I just really struggled with putting people in a position and then them like not wanting it as bad for whatever reason that may be, and so there was a little bit of that. And then it just, for my business, I really like doing, right, instead of teaching. And so I found that out by having the team, is that I'm more of a doer and just kind of get it done instead of sitting here and teaching. And good for those people that can teach and love that, because there definitely needs to be those people out there.
There's just so many options, and like as you began and started as a real estate agent, did you know how many different business models agents, like you just don't.
No idea.
And so that's something I want to, like every agent I have on, I want to help understand why they're doing the model that they see that they're doing, and why does it fit them? What have they tested out? One, because I'm kind of exploring the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, what do I want to do? And the reason I don't have agents is simply because I want to be around people that are killers, like that want to just do a lot.
It's tough to find people like that
want to be on a team.
They want to be on a team, first of all, because a lot of killers, as you put it. No, it's good. I kind of like it though, just because some savage people, right? That are really to go out there, wake up every single day, put in the work, wake up early, do it, and then stay out late doing it, and then wake up early and do it all over again. It's really hard to find people like that, and that are just really committed to it every single day as well too. Now, obviously, like you said, you're transitioning to how do you make it better, and I've run through the gamut again of what works best for me, and right now I'm still learning. As we were talking before the podcast started, is that we're just trying to figure this out as we go, and every day it's something new. And at the position I'm in, it's just like, how can I take some things off my plate to free up more time to do more money making activities?
Yep. What's that MREA book that we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
It's the leverage. It's the leverage piece of the triangle. Yeah. Like I learned that honestly very early in my business career. I worked for a financial planner, and I noticed everyone in the office who got an assistant, their business would double or triple. Mm-hmm. And the company did a really good job training the assistant. So they basically had a perfect assistant day one when they started. And I was like, oh man, those people are important, right? You have your salesperson, they're really important, but that admin on the back end. And so that's that leverage piece, whether it's a full-time or if it's just a content creator, right, that does all that social media stuff for you or whatever. So.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And I think that if you have the right person, you put the right person in that job, that's really important too, because how many times as agents, we know people that say, hey, I'm kind of retiring, or, I have a daughter that's home or a son that's home for the summer. They'd love to know a little bit more about real estate. A lot of times we hire out of convenience, right? And that's not very ideal. You need to hire out of someone that you think is going to be a killer, as you put it, right? Or someone that's going to do really great in that position, right? Because you can, like you said, with the right person in that position, you can double your business or even more. And that person's learning right behind you. And if they are serious about this job, they could take on more managerial roles as you grow, and you can keep focusing on bringing in more clients or growing your business. With that, though, I think it's very, very important that you, and I think a lot of agents kind of skim past this part. They're like, oh, it works. I've always done it this way, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Well, the only person that knows how that works is you. So I think having systems in place will not only help alleviate a lot of stress on agents, but also help train whoever you're utilizing to help you as well, too.
Yeah. So when you say systems, how much do you believe in systems? And then that's a tough thing to quantify. Give me an example.
Yeah, so I think that something that I utilize are, the weekly schedule and breakdown for my assistant. I try to give her as much autonomy as possible because she is planning on getting her license. Like I said, she's almost through it right now. And so she wants to sell, things like that. So not only am I utilizing her as my assistant, but I'm also trying to train her as well, too. But the weekly schedule. You come in Monday, these are the things I need you to do. Tuesday, these are the things I need you to do. And if you can't ever reach me, these are the things, and you feel like there's nothing for you to do, which there's always something to do, right? Yeah. Always revert back to this. So I think that it's having more of a structure as well too. Structure and systems are kind of synonymous.
Very much, yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I utilize with that. And then I come from the Excel background. So I've tried so many different CRM systems, things like that. And honestly, and I know I'm going to catch some heat. We're going to catch some heat from this, but Excel and the way I can do it and the way I can show someone is just a little bit better. Cause again, I'm showing, my business is based on relationship based, not transactional. And so my systems and my database is just full of extra notes, like pets' names, birth dates, things like that. Like, give me the actual information that I care about my people about.
Yeah. So, and you've built that out.
I've built it out. I'm always in it. She's always in it.
Is it Excel or is it Google spreadsheets?
It is. Well, so it's an Excel sheet, but it's in our Google Share Drive. so everyone has access to it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So back to the reason for the podcast, our industry and just agents, for lack of better words, just hating on other agents for I don't say no good reason, but just for an ego boost. Give me a scale on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel our industry is works together right now? Like, how good is it? And then we'll go to how good do you think we can get, or what's the gap there?
Yeah. So
1 being bad, 10 being like we're amazing and we all high five and transactions are wonderful.
I have a philosophy that there's always room for improvement. And I think our business is very unique where it's kind of lonely, right? You're by yourself a lot. There's not a whole lot of collaboration. And some people may see that as a negative thing, but I see that as a positive because there's only room to go up, right? And I think that's the whole basis of this podcast is how can we work together for our clients? Because ultimately that's really what it's about, right?
Our clients and us, right? Like it's going to get a better transaction for our clients, but we're also going to have better mental health as agents.
That's huge.
Or lenders.
Oh, so. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think the keeping a good relationship with other agents and also having more of a collaboration. Example, so I said, I do a lot of new construction. Some may say, okay, well, I have this house right down the road from me, and it's the same square footage, it's the same year build, right? Brand new construction, everything, same bedrooms, finished basement, both walkouts, yada, yada, yada. Some may say that's my competition. And that could be my competition if, let's say, you're going out looking for homes with your agent, right? You may look at mine, you may look at theirs. But it can also be collaboration as well, too. Why don't we do open houses the same time? And even though they may not be interested in mine because all my bedrooms are on one wing of the house, but I know yours is, somewhere else where they're separated, right? The primary and then the other couple bedrooms maybe on that main level. That's what I'm talking about here, because we're all here to win it. And if they're not interested in mine, I can send them down to yours as well, too. Or we do again, like an agent open where more agents come in and it's more collaborative as well too, to get the name out there from that builder or whatever product you have.
You've been in the business a little bit longer. Help me understand that the agent open house, like I've always seen those as like, I can't find the value to attend as an agent. Convince me or tell me the pros and cons. Like, what am I missing?
Yeah. So, I sometimes get caught in a little hole thinking the same way, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. I would say the con is what I always think is like, well, shoot, if they want to see the house or if they have a buyer, they're going to bring them through. There's nothing.
Or like if they were in my database, like they would have seen it, right? They would have picked it.
Yeah. So there is that. But I do think that the benefits again outweigh the cons, and the benefits would be inviting those agents over. Just because, how many times have you seen a home with photos and then you are there and you say, well, man, this room's a little bit bigger than I thought, or these darker cabinets, example, look better in person, especially when the natural light comes through the windows, because sometimes photos just don't capture the natural light at certain times of day. So I think not only aesthetically with the home it helps, but I think the biggest elephant in the room is cultivating that relationship with other realtors. Yeah. There are some realtors out there, unfortunately, that are very difficult to work with, right? And so you say, hey, listen, if I have a client and they're between 3 homes and they all look about the same, they're all priced out, subconsciously you may, or not even, you may just tell that your buyers, hey, listen, I do know these agents, all 3 of them. They're all obviously great agents, but I will tell you, I've had experience with this one house, this one agent. It's not very good. So if I do have a say in it, and if you're open to my suggestion, I would probably stick to these other 2 houses. So cultivating that relationship with other realtors happens at those agent opens too. And as much as we may not like it, it's very, 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 very important. Yeah.
The agent networking is where I come back to, is like, that's the piece that I would agree. I mean, I can't count how many deals I've done internally Keller Williams network, because I'm in the office all the time. We're talking about transactions, and so has a property come up, or I've got one that comes up, and we do something relatively off market. It's just agent to agent inside. And to me, that's probably pretty similar to the agent tours and getting that network of agents that go. So, okay, that's fair. I got to figure out which ones. Well, which ones? Then you have which one is it? Urbandale? Is it Ankeny? Is it how? It's not a consistent thing either. Yeah, it's probably Ankeny. Probably has the most consistent that I'm aware of.
Yeah, they're Wednesday tours. They do a really good job, and I'm jealous of that because no other community. You're right.
Yeah, they do a really good job. Yeah,
just every Wednesday, and I'm not sure if you're on their email list, but there's always multiple homes on it, and so kudos to those agents. Yeah, and that's a price point I don't usually work with all the time, right? So it's that 600 plus. Yeah, typically, yeah. That's I'd say about 5 plus. Yeah, but you're usually right. It's usually a home that you really want to write home about, pun intended, right? Like it's a solid property. Yeah. You want more agency on it. Maybe hasn't been quite the traffic, or maybe it's a brand new home, or maybe it's a builder that that they want to get the word out, a newer builder or what have you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks for that. How about? Wait, let's do, when you think about realtors, another realtor you're going to work with, a respectable realtor, what attributes do they have, and what can you like visually see or feel in the transaction with them, like a good one?
Yeah. So, a few things that I think probably make a great agent, right, is the communication. Right now, my builder, we're kind of new to the marketplace, and we're at a pretty high price point, right?
Can you share what your builder is? Do you care?
It's Embark Signature Homes. Cool. And so we build like 650 to, well, we're building a home show, and that's going to be $2 million. So I'd say about 650 and above, right? Okay. And since we're so new, we've been doing these coffee meetings with agents. And we say, hey, listen, we're putting our ego aside. What do you like when you work with an agent? A builder. And then what don't you like? What are some trends you're seeing in our marketplace? What are some things that overall we can just do better? Yeah. And there's no like catch to it. It's just gloves are off. Let us buy you coffee, 30 minutes of your time. And time again, a lot of the agents are saying, hey, communication. Just communicate. That is a builder thing, but it's also an agent thing, right? And so just over communicate. And when I work with an agent that over communicates, lets me know, doesn't wait till day of where there's a problem or we can't close on time. Don't tell me right now. Tell me as soon as you think something's going on, because then we can again be collaborative and we can try to figure out a solution. Because as I mentioned before, before this podcast again started, is that, a lot of times I have a seller that wants to sell a house. You have a buyer that wants to buy the house. How can we just make that happen? Right? Because it doesn't matter what you and I think. This is our seller's life and our buyer's life. So how can we just make them happy? They don't care what we have going on or anything like that. They just want in the house and they want to sell the house.
How many times do you think that agent ego gets in the way of that transaction? Like I've got my number one, like out of 10 transactions, how many times does the ego get in the way? And then I'll share yours.
I would say not. I probably would change that a little bit and not say it gets in the way, but definitely comes up. Okay. I would say it comes up. Probably like over half the time, maybe half the time.
I was going to go four out of 10.
I'd say five out of 10. It just comes up. A lot of times though, again, I had that philosophy.
You see it because you've heard it enough.
You've heard it enough, right? And there may be like little jabs. That's why I said comes up, because there might be like something, but at this point, just like you have a lot going on, a family, you're an investor. Does, everyone's got stuff going on. And so it's like, I'm not even going to go down this path. Like what you said to me, I don't really care. I'm just going to move on, whatever. Because once I exit out of this text or whatever you might have sent me or email, it's whatever. That's fine.
One of my mom always used to say this is be the bigger person. Yeah. Like it's such a cliche thing. I actually named one of my LLCs that simply because I was like, just be the bigger person. When someone says something snarky, egotistical, you're just like, okay, take that in. Let's move forward. How can we take action on this?
Exactly. Also too, something that I think a lot of times agents forget, and how like the ego comes in or attitude kind of comes in, is that, we love, a lot of us agents, we love our clients, right? Like they are our people, right? We have a great relationship with them. And so we care a lot about them. And so sometimes that stuff comes to heart. And so we have to really put that into check, because a lot of times I believe we're being hired because we're taking emotions out of it. Yeah. But something that a lot of agents, I think what happens is that, say my seller wants to say something back or wants to counter back, example. And then the buyer agent may say, well, there's no way that's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I'm not the one telling you this. Yeah. I'm the messenger. Remember that old saying, don't shoot the messenger type of deal? This is simply what they want to counter back for. And I would love to hear what your buyer has to say about this. I don't know how many times I say that. It's like, I understand that. And thank you for that concern. But what is your buyer want to say to this? Is kind of how I turn that script. It's like, well, that's a very good point. But what does the buyer think? Because ultimately it's their decision. Sometimes though, it's really important to mitigate that attitude with that agent, because sometimes if that agent has attitude, unfortunately, they may go to the client, and that projects onto them. And then,
we're just telling more of the story. This is why we got to this number. This is why we're asking for this. We gave up this. Can we meet here? Right.
Exactly.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes that might just be negotiating 101. But do you think being liked in the industry is important to getting your clients to the closing table, and being liked by other realtors?
Yeah, I think that having a good reputation is very, very important, because like we had just said, there may be a multiple offer situation. And if I'm that difficult agent, or coined to be that difficult agent, I may go to the bottom of that ladder with those offers if they're all seemingly the same offer. So I do think it's really important to have a good relationship and to be somewhat liked within the industry as well. I just can't think of a situation where you would always not be liked. Like you would have to go out of your way to constantly be a jerk, to not be liked.
I was going to say, do you think people that are maybe not as other realtors are not as excited to work with XYZ realtors. Do you think they actually know that and they're just like, that's part of my business? Like, I'm sorry. Or is it like they're just oblivious and they literally?
I like to think that sometimes people have some things going on in their life that make them that way, unfortunately. And so that's just the way that they are, again, unfortunately. And so there are a couple realtors in the back of my mind.
Yeah,
I'm like,
sure.
man, I really don't want to talk to this person. Like, this is going to be a hassle. And, I have to stand up, make the phone call, take a deep breath. And it's like, okay. Right. And just understand there's going to be some punches, and just say, okay, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so, I think that there just might be a little bit going on. And you always have to, again, put yourself in check as well as say, hey, listen, just don't feed into this person because this is just their MO. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be aggressive negotiators. They're going to throw some low blows, or they're going to tear up the property to justify the low offer, whatever the unique situation would be. But I do think that it's important to be liked in our industry, to answer your question.
The being liked thing, being respected, same boat, same premise. Understanding the other person's position, I think, is what you're saying too, is like, what do they have going on in their life? Why are they the flat fee broker? Why are they charging 1%, charging 4%, charging 7%? Like, what is that? Like, that's their deal. I can't handle that. I can't. Yeah. It's not my decision. My business is my business. What they're doing is different.
100%. And that's a good thing about our industry is that there may be people with that business model and that works well for them, and so be it. My business model is not a flat fee. It's not a low percentage, things like that. It's because I value myself in a different way than maybe what works best for them. And so, and that gives the general public options to choose from.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Let's dig into the general public and their vision of realtors, right? So I think in this podcast, yes, we have realtors talking to and for other realtors. It's also important to know as realtors, how do we show ourselves in the general public, right? So generally, what are attributes that you see successful realtors portray that you believe the public is like, yes, I want to work with that type of person? Because one of the things I've realized as an agent, been in the business a handful of years, the best realtors do not get the business.
Yeah, that's a really tough pill to swallow, because I've seen that a time or two as well.
I mean, let's be honest, a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's almost guaranteed the best realtor doesn't get the business. The most liked, trusted, known, seen realtor gets it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's, that old saying of experience is the best teacher and all that other stuff as well too. But I also think that the person that's out there in front of you all the time, you can't be a closet realtor. Okay. Yeah. And, unfortunately that some agents, I've tried to pinpoint this, is that, cause there's some really great agents that don't market whatsoever on any kind of social media platform.
What defines a great agent though?
Well, what's that?
What defines a great agent?
Exactly. Well, that's true too, and everyone can define that differently. For me, a great agent is always willing to go to bat for your client, really knowledgeable and always soaking up new knowledge, fresh information, stays on top of mortgage information, and actually cares about their client and does a certain level of business.
Yep.
That encompasses
a certain level of business.
It does a certain level of business. That encompasses it. Or just really, really, really good at their niche. Like you mentioned earlier, you're like, hey, I don't really do a whole lot on that price point. You have a niche of investors. You're really, really good at that. Right. And so that's where your lane is. And so I would say you're a great agent, right? Because of that, just really doubling down on your craft.
Makes sense. Lead generation wise, where do you find, without being as transparent or not transparent as you want, generally when you first started, where did leads come from? How did you source those compared to where you are currently, and what has made that transition happen?
Yeah. So when I started many, many moons ago, there was this thing called Craigslist, and I would go on there and you could search for sale by owners. And so I called a lot of FSBOs, and I had a script made up. I can recite like half of it, I think, but still to this day. And I would just call and call and call. And, I like to think that it gave me tough skin because some people were super nice on the phone. And I think they were getting called a lot around then.
You think?
Yeah. And sometimes, more times than not, I'd get cussed out or something. And I'd say, okay, well, thank you for your click. And they'd hang up and I'd say, okay, well, on to the next one, and I just call them. So a lot of my business did come from for sale by owners, a heavy majority. Also, too, like I mentioned at the top of this podcast, that I represented, I worked for a brokerage that had a very large building company with it. And so I was never a listing agent of those homes, but they gave me the ability to sit in a development where there'd be about 4 homes finished in that development. And so they'd all be different floor plans. And so I got some business just coming in from that naturally. It was a little bit different times in open houses, which I think a whole nother topic, because I think open houses are really going to kick off again, but come after July 1st. But nonetheless, so that was kind of where my business came from. For sale by owners, I walked neighborhoods. Yeah. I would see distressed properties. I had door hangers. I'd put them on there with my card insert on it. That was it. But the heavy majority were open houses and for sale by owners calling them.
The open houses, or the, just holding those new builds open, how much consumer feedback went into how you did business, right? Because I listened to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk. Yeah. I don't know if you know Gary, but one of his stories, Gary V, one of his stories is in a wine store, when he managed it, he would watch the consumer as they went around the wine store of what they did and whatever, right? So agents, it's really tough to get that, buyer mentality or hear that buyer without them actually working with you. Agent or open houses, not agent open houses, or the newer development sitting in there, just listening to the buyers as they come through. I feel like that's a pretty similar thing. Do you remember that? Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah, and I'm still doing open houses now too. I think that always trying something new, I think location, I think home, I think that it definitely warrants different open house tactics. Yeah. And you really can get really good at open houses too. But you hit the nail on the head, just listen a lot, and they'll tell you the problems the more you listen and the more you pinpoint the right questions to ask. And I think that that's how some people are really successful at open houses. But yeah, I would ask, I had them, I've gone through different, please fill this out, please sign in, that whole thing. I made signs during the safety pledge with Des Moines Area Association Realtors. That really helped as well too, to get people to sign in. But nonetheless, it was just more just asking questions. And through those questions, I'm trying to figure out, maybe what they do for work, where their current house is, if they're working with an agent. That's a huge one. That's the number one question to ask, right? And so you can really just pinpoint and just try different things with people. And the longer you do it and the more you do it, the more better you should become. And I think it's really important because sometimes agents do open houses just to do them for their client and just to pass the time. And it's
the biggest joke.
Dude, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is, because I've done thousands of open houses now, and I can probably count on one hand how many times I actually sold the house to someone that came in, right? Because instantly, as you know, and all the agents probably listening to this podcast, that, if I'm sitting in a 2-story home and all the bedrooms are upstairs, someone comes and says, well, I really like the house, but I want the primary bedroom to be on this main level, a story and a half. Instantly, I turn the conversation from that house into, I can help you find that home, right? So, and I tell that to my sellers too. Hey, I can do an open house, but it's just going to make you happy, and all of your neighbors are going to see your house, because that's typically who's going to come in. So, but
how many consumers know that?
Not enough.
Oh my gosh.
Not enough. It does help with exposure, and I think there's other things that are really helpful as well you can do. I mean, we can have a whole podcast about open houses. Yes. And
okay, so one more on open houses. We won't have a whole podcast on it. But how long agents doing open houses for 3 months, 6 months? How long before, if they haven't got a deal, are they they're doing it wrong? What should they expect?
Yeah. Again, that's kind of a loaded question, because what's your traffic coming in as well too?
I'd say just standard, whatever, 2-3 groups a Sunday.
I'd say if you're not picking up a client on average, probably from an open house, say you get on average 4 guests through an open house, right? 2 probably being legit leads. If you haven't picked up a client in about 6 months from that, you should really...
Like a closing, or someone that's...
an active buyer or seller that's come through, someone legit. because again, like open house numbers just haven't been where they're at. Yeah. And an overwhelming majority of people that come through open houses now are represented by an agent, at least right now. So it's kind of tough to find like one legit action. And a lot of lookers, a lot of saying, oh, we were just driving by, you know, I saw this house being built, blah, blah, blah. And I do a lot of new construction too. Okay. That's primarily when I do the open houses. So for me, I'd say if you don't pick one up in like 4 to 6 months, probably like a solid one, you really need to get back to the chalkboard, or honestly shadow another agent that's really good at open houses. Say, hey, what are you doing? What literature do you have out? What questions do you have? Are you going through the house with them, or are you standing in the kitchen and say, hey, take a look. This house is blah, blah, bedrooms, blah, blah, square foot. Let me know if you have any questions. Like, that's really passive, right? Yeah. And so take it serious. What's the prep work that you have for that open house too? Because a lot of agents, again, like I said, just kind of do it to pass time and just to make their client happy, and they're just there and it's like, okay, I'm in and I'm out. Well, you didn't really take that serious, right? And so how many directional signs did you put up? Did you post it on social media channels? You're doing that. What's driving traffic there?
You're an open house master. You just listen to talk to you, like you've done a lot. You get it. Yeah. Master and like, it's a primary lead source. Yeah. What's when you were getting into the business, just backtrack on this. What was a disadvantage that you had when you started?
I would say a lot of the people that I knew were around my age. And so about, I got in the business at 22. So from like 20-year-olds to like 24, or like was the demographic that I knew, no one was buying a house. They were either in school, or they were spending a bunch of money right out of school because they started making money and their student loans were in deferment for that first 6 months. And then after that 6 months, they're like, shucks, I can't buy anything because I'm broke with these student loans. So that was a very unique time frame for me. So again, that's why it was very important for me to act as a sponge, join different committees, get heavily involved with the local home builder association. I said, okay, well, this is my building phase then. Or I have to come correct with anyone older than me, right, for them to take me serious. Like I have to know my shit, long story short. And so that's really what I was doing, was just trying to scrape by with those for sale by owners, walking the neighborhoods, the open house people. And that kind of got me through. And then during that same time, every single day, I was in the office and I was learning something new. I built out a schedule. I said, okay, from this time frame, I'm doing handwritten notes. From this time frame, I'm calling for sale by owners. From this time frame, I'm watching YouTube videos, or I'm reading something, and so or I'm shadowing. And so a lot of that was done that first like 2-3 years. Yeah.
So that has morphed into your business today. Mm-hmm. Where you said you're still doing open houses. Mm-hmm. What else? Like
open houses. When I was early on in my career, it was more transactional. And that makes me sad to say that. It was like, hey, how many deals can I do? What money am I making? Making sure bills are paid on top of all of that.
That's not a sad thing.
Yeah, well, it was sad because it was like, I didn't really care a whole lot. It was just, hey, who's next? What more do I got to do? And I remember it all changed about 3 years in the business. I sat down with some buyers, and they had gone through a foreclosure. They had some unique things going on with them, and they didn't think they were going to be able to buy a house ever again. And they didn't really understand, like, oh, well, FHA, you can buy a house 3 years later, blah, blah, blah. So we're sitting down with them, and they were going to build a home with me. And at that time, we filled out the purchase agreements by hand, not on .loop or DocuSign or whatever.
Back in my day.
Yeah. And so I'm filling it out, and I put the address at the top of a piece of paper, and I hear like some sniffling, and I look up. We're at this big conference room table, right, at the builder's office, and they're like, hugging each other, and they're kind of crying. I said, is everything okay? And they said, well, we never thought that we'd get in this position, and you helped us like understand that this can become like something. Long story short, might be doctoring it up a little bit. But anyway, and in that instant, though, it kind of changed my thing. I'm like, man, I'm really like affecting people's lives a little bit with this. And so I want to get to know them. I really care about them. And so due to that relationship base, the transitions moved from transactional to relationship. And due to that relationship that I have with my clients, that's where now they're all part of my sphere of influence, right? Yep. My SOI. And so I just hammered down on them. And so I sell a lot more on referral base. Yeah. So I got the little bit of open house stuff that trickles in, the new construction stuff that trickles in. But then a lot of my transactions are from my sphere of influence, so my relationship.
It was 3 years in when you transitioned to start paying more attention to your past clients in Sphere.
100%. Yeah. It's like, I want to get to know them. I'm taking them out to coffee. I'm trying to have lunch. If I have some spare time, I can call. It drives my wife nuts that I'm always, I'll just send a text. Hey, just thinking of you. If someone pops in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I haven't seen this person in a while. What the heck are you up to? And carry on. It's something short and sweet, but it's like, yeah, I just want to know how you're doing. Is there anything I can help with? One of my past clients had some issue with a roof. Like, I sold her house maybe 5 years ago, something like that. And it's like, hey, you're not under warranty anymore, but do you need a contractor? I can send someone over there, take a look at it. She's like, just want to make sure you're fine. And I think that people understand people more than what we think as realtors, and they can see through a lot of bullshit. Yes. And so I think when you just double down on that relationship, good things are going to come to you.
That's the reason I ask is it was my third year in the business where I sat down with the senior agent. It wasn't quite as moving as your story, but I was like, Aaron, based on, me doing 50 deals a year for the last 3 years and where I'm at now and what I want to get to, I was like, what do I need to do? And she goes, what do you do for your database? And I was like, nothing. She's like, nothing? I was like, no, I talk to the people that talk to me, but I don't do anything.
I'm cringing over here.
Yeah. And she's like, you need to do this, and this. And I was like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's,
go on.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's like what I focused on the last year and a half, 2 years. So.
Yeah. Then that's what I try to tell some new agents when they're looking to shadow me, because it happens from time to time. I say, hey, you got to get that SOI up and running. And how I explain it to people is that, hey, and if you're a new agent listening to this, I always tell people your SOI should be a top 100 people that you think that if you were not in the room, they would go to bat for you. So if we were sitting here talking about, Darson's telling me, hey, I think I might sell a house, and I'm on your SOI list. I maybe never bought a home from you, but I say, hey, listen, Darson, I know this guy or this girl that's going to do really great for you. I think they're a great realtor. Let me give you their number. I should be on your SOI list. If you think I would do that for you, just build that list out. And then, again, Brian Buffini, I mentioned him earlier, calls, notes, and Popeyes. So call them on the regular, send them some handwritten notes, and then pop by. So just swing by, say hello, how's it going? Bring them an item of value, whatever that may be.
That's cool. I've not heard the 100 person SOI. I guess that's just like, is that a Brian Buffini thing?
No,
it's a little smaller.
Yeah,
right?
it's just,
I love it.
I remember when I was first starting out, that was the first thing that I was told to do, and it was 100 people. And I think that because, I think I had like 65 people,
whatever.
But I think it's just the kind of the law of averages, things like that. The more people you have, and I will tell you, I have like 5 of the same people that were on there, because as time goes on, you're constantly updating it. But when I first did those 65 people, I think only like 5 are the original folks.
Yeah,
but
that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you, joining me, sharing your knowledge, and helping any other agents that, whether they're new, or been in the business for a while. I think they can learn something from this podcast, whether it's lead gen stuff or just best practices as an agent, or how to work with people better. Right. That's the goal of these podcasts. So, anything, I guess you have anything to promote? You want to it's tough to you're talking to your peers, go follow me on all your socials or whatever. But yeah, what would you say?
No. Just work hard, be nice is the most simplest thing I can say. Just work hard, be nice. Always just do the right thing. I think it's really important. I sent the last, 2 years of transactions I did this about 4 months ago. I sent everyone a handwritten note that I had done a deal with a realtor. And I said, hey, listen, come July, these things that are happening with NAR, our business is going to change. So I think it's really, really important that we all become a little bit more tighter knit. And so if there's ever anything I can do, or if you ever have any questions, please reach out. I think that's really important for our industry as well, too, that we're not always competing against each other. Again, we need to become a little bit collaborative for the general public, and also for us. You're just going to learn more stuff, just become better agents.
Yeah. I don't think we're ever competing against each other.
Good.
This is my theory, and I've shared this on other podcasts. So there's 13,000 transactions in DMAR. There's 2 sides to almost every transaction. 26,000 transactions, and 100 transactions per agent is like a killer. Right? If you're at 300, you're top 5 in the, probably. So there is so many transactions available.
There are a lot of transactions, but I will say, if you look at the list, I do get the list of top agents in our marketplace. There's like 2,300 realtors, right? And DMAR, I think is what you said as well. If you look at that, the top like 200-300 do the most deals, and then it just severely drops off towards like 5 homes, per person.
1,500 agents do 4 transactions.
Yeah, so it's so I do think for those folks that do a lot of business, they're gonna win their clients day in and day out because they do those little things, right? So I think there is a little bit of competition out there. We may just disagree or agree to disagree on that.
It's just a perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Like I want to compete. Like I want to, if we sit down against, and go a listing against each other, that's fine. Right.
Yeah.
But like in general, there's just another deal to go get.
Yeah. And so we do share the same idea, is that there's enough business out there for everyone is kind of what I say. It's like, listen, if you lost out on this, just keep pushing because there's enough deals out there. Just keep honing your craft.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Thanks again for having me, Darson.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You too.